everyone! Welcome to another live interview session here at the PAME Code Facebook group's Season of Grit and Resilience. I'm Emmy, your host, and today our very special guest is a university lecturer at the School of Psychology at Keele University and a world leader in mindset research in children. And she's here with us today to talk about how to build grit and resilience in children. I'm really excited to learn more about this, especially with me having a 3-year-old kid myself. So without further ado, for the very first time, we're having it live at the PAME Code headquarters. Please welcome Dr. Yvonne Skipper.
Hello.
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so exciting that you've come to, talk to us today about mindset research and developing grit and resilience in children, because this is really important. A lot of our members are actually parents, mothers, fathers of young children, and teachers as well. So I'm sure we'll learn so much from you. So this is your research area. So tell us, how is mindset related with grit and resilience?
Yeah, so mindset is the idea that we can think of intelligence in two ways. One way is that we have a fixed mindset. So we think some people just find things easier, they're just smarter, they're gifted, things just come a little bit easy to them. And on the other hand, some people believe intelligence is malleable like a muscle. So you wouldn't go to the gym and pick up the highest weights. So some people think intelligence can be grown in the same way as a muscle can. So this is called a growth mindset, the idea that you can grow your intelligence. And the other one, where you think some people are more gifted than others, is called a fixed mindset. And these affect lots of different things about us. So if you imagine you're a child who thinks that some people just have a gift for maths and it just comes easy to them, when you're sitting in class one day and things get a little bit difficult and you start struggling, you might think, oh, I've just not got a maths brain, maths just isn't the thing for me. And so these kids are quite likely to give up, they start guessing, they suddenly decide that they're going to start playing around, they start looking at the ceiling, they just don't really dig in. But kids who have more of a growth mindset and they think that they can grow their maths brain, they're much more likely to be like, oh, a tricky problem, what can I do to get better at it? How can I try some different strategies? Can I speak to my teacher? Can I speak to my friends? And so these kids quite often go on and show that grit and resilience because they feel in control. They feel that there's something they can do to grow their maths brain, rather than just thinking some kids are just good at this and I'm not one of those kids.
So it's with the growth mindset, it's not just I'm good at this or I'm not good at this. There's a bit of flexibility and you can develop skills if you have to. So having a fixed or a growth mindset, is that innate? Like, do children tend to have just a fixed mindset, or are you born having a growth mindset? How does this work?
So mindsets come to us in lots of different ways. They come from our parents. They come from, when you're watching mum and dad cook maybe one evening and they cook and they burn it and they say, oh gosh, I'm a terrible chef. This is rubbish. That's it. We're getting pizza. Or if mum and dad say, oh, I didn't do very well this time. Next time I better keep an eye on it, follow the recipe, read the lines more carefully. So it can be something as simple as just modeling how you deal with challenges in your own life. But it can also be to do with the sorts of feedback that you give your child. So if your child is sitting and they're building a tower, you might say, oh, wow, you're so clever. You're really smart at this. You're gifted, really gifted. You're good at this. And it sounds really nice to say that, but what you're saying is you're gifted, and the kid's kind of thinking, okay, I'm gifted, but how did I get gifted, and how do I stay gifted? And, so there's nothing they can do about it. But if you say something like, oh, you've really worked hard to make sure your blocks all line up so you've got a strong tower, that's great, well done. You're telling them it's something that they've done. So that kind of focus on what you're doing rather than what you are is one way in which we can promote growth mindsets. Another thing I just wanted to mention is I've talked to them as if they're separate, but they are on a kind of spectrum. So you can be very growth or you can be very fixed, and you might move up and down. So I think of myself as quite a growth mindset person, but if I've had a bad day and I've got stuck in traffic and something's happened at work,
I'm just not good at this.
Yeah, and then I get a paper rejection and I just think, oh no, so we all have times where we might be more fixed and more growth, but it's just being aware of what that voice in our head is saying and trying to make sure it's saying more growth mindset things to us.
I'm really quite interested with the messages that you tell children, because you hear this all the time. Oh, you're so clever. So instead of saying you're so clever, what would you suggest people to say instead of saying it in that way?
Yeah, it feels very natural to say that. I think a lot of us have been raised in kind of the self-esteem movement where we really want to praise our kids lots and tell them how good they are because we think it's going to build resilience. But actually all the literature is suggesting you're smart, you're clever, you're gifted stuff is not really helping. So focusing on what the child has done. So you've really been very careful to stay in between the lines when you're colouring, or you've really thought hard about this, or you've really planned your essay out very carefully. So thinking about what the child has done, their efforts and their techniques, and focusing on how they're developing compared to themselves. Not, wow, you got 10 out of 10, top of the class, but wow, you got 10 out of 10 and last week you got 8. You know, your hard work and your spelling is really paying off for you. So focusing on your child compared to themselves.
You're highlighting the progress and the development that they're making rather than it's fixed. You know, you're just so good. Oh, well done. But it's well done. You've actually progressed. Last week you've accomplished 8 out of 10, and now it's 10 out of 10. It's fantastic.
And as well, it's to do with how you deal with failures, and that's really, really powerful because nobody likes failing. None of us think, yes, I failed. This is a great growth mindset option for me. But when children fail, sometimes we might say things that sound kind of comforting, but they're very fixed, like, oh, don't worry, not everyone can be good at everything, or not everybody has a maths brain. And it sounds kind of nice, but what you're kind of saying is, so don't worry about it, you know, don't try.
It's just how it is.
Exactly. But if you focus more on, okay, you know, that was a bit tricky this time, so what can we do to help you next time? You know, what do you think? Do you think that you revised enough, or do you think there's a different way you can try it next time? So focusing on what they can do in the future, it feels more like a trajectory. A kind of word of caution there is to not necessarily do it while the child's in that kind of frustrated, angry stage that we tend to be in once we've just failed. Wait until they've had a bit of time to process it and think about it, and when they're ready to move forward, that's probably the better time to think about how to continue on their learning journey.
And in terms of developing a growth mindset, is it best to start early? I mean, with a toddler, for example, or do you go all the way until they are in their adolescence? When is the best time to start?
The best time is to start as early as possible, literally as soon as you possibly can, just catching yourself. Now, we all say, even I say these things, oh, clever girl. It kind of comes out. It's really natural.
Yeah.
So just trying to be aware. I mean, there's been some studies that have shown that if you give effort-related feedback when children are only 18 months, they have more of it affects their mindset when they're 8 years old. So the sooner you can get these messages in, the better. And we've been working with a lot of schools recently as well to try and ensure that when kids go into year 1, and they don't really know what success is and what a clever boy or a clever girl is, or what it is to be smart at school, to really focus on the process and the development at that stage. So as early as possible and consistently, but particularly when you're going through transitions, when you first go to primary school or when you move up to high school even, there's the opportunity to build new views of yourself and of school. So being particularly aware of those sorts of messages around transitions is really powerful.
Yes, and I know you've done a lot of work in schools. Tell us a bit about your projects in schools.
Sure. So one of them we've been working on for the last few years is with primary schools in Stoke. So we work with Stoke Reeds, and they do some really exciting stuff on literacy in the city, and there's a real buzz around literacy. There's big citywide networks, teachers sharing really good practice. We've got the top 100 reads, which all primary school children should read by the time they leave primary school. So it's really exciting, and we got in touch with them and we talked about how we could combine all this great work on phonics with mindset work. So we worked with the teachers to create this toolkit, which is available. I can send a link to your viewers. And to create a toolkit with ideas of things you can use in the classroom, different ways of giving feedback, different ways of setting up your classroom, and even simple things like typically in classes, what we do is we get the kids to do something and then we put the best ones on the wall and we showcase
the best.
Yeah, the best.
Practice, yeah.
And actually one of our ideas we talked about with the teachers is showcasing, instead of just the final thing, getting them to, let's say, draw a car and giving them time to do that each week, and then putting up every single one so we can see the journey from the first car, which is maybe not great, and building
and
through.
You see the progress.
Exactly. So the Willows have taken this and they've had their year ones drawing themselves, and they've got the pictures on the wall, and they're like improving every single time they practice it. So really celebrating that journey from here to there, and how what you've done has helped you to get to where you are now.
And do you do any evaluation of this kind of work? How does that impact on self-esteem, for example, or what factors do you look at in your research?
Yeah, so for the Stoke Reed's Mindset Toolkit, what we've been looking at most is literacy, because we're very interested in how that sort of digging in, that resilience, when you're reading, there's so many opportunities to make a mistake, from the phoneme right through to the word, right through to the comprehension. And we have found that, using the toolkit, the schools which have used this have shown better literacy. So we have found that over time, and we think that it will probably be there with other subjects as well, but we focus mainly on literacy. But for me, it's interesting, particularly around maths and science, because we have this idea of a maths brain, which kids tend to have. Yeah. People don't typically say she's got a history brain. There's something about maths and science that people are much more fixed on. So some of my work has been about how we can encourage girls, particularly, to see their journeys in maths and science, and that it's not a male ability. Because if you see it as fixed and you see mainly men in that field, it's easy to be fixed and it's not a girl thing. So how we can use kind of process feedback and look at journeys of people to encourage girls into science.
And to develop the skills in science and maths.
Of course, yeah.
So what sort of tools do you have to do that, to encourage girls to develop maths and science skills?
So the study which I did looking into this was to do with, again, feedback. It was to do with how we talk about success in maths. Do we talk about eureka moments, or do we talk about, the fact that usually we have to work at these things and develop skills in the same way that we do in other ways? To use female scientists in the classroom. Sometimes we don't necessarily realize how often our lessons are very much made up of male success in subjects. So seeing people like you succeeding helps to break down some of those barriers, and just using that process, that effort-related feedback about the girl's journey through, as well as boys, so that we're not using, because sometimes boys get person feedback and girls get effort feedback. If you're a girl, you're much more likely to get on your report card, she worked hard, and boys are more likely to get things like, could be great if you worked. Do you know what I mean? So there's sometimes a slight difference.
There's a difference.
So just being aware in the way we talk to boys and girls about their successes as well, trying not to make those differences. And sometimes it's so subtle. Like in one of the studies, it was so small, you did a good job drawing versus you're a good drawer.
Yeah.
That's really small. As an adult, you might not be aware of that, but kids, they're constantly scanning. Am I doing well? Is this the right thing for me to be doing? Should I keep doing it? And so, just trying as adults to be aware of those tiny nuances in how we speak to different kids, and how we can kind of focus on what they're doing, not who they are.
Yeah. So the key message there is, when you actually give feedback to a child, you focus on the effort, on the activity or the action, rather than the person. Is that what you're saying? So like the example you've given, instead of saying you are a good drawer, you actually say you are good at drawing this. Is that
you did a good job drawing, or you thought about how to do the shapes, or something that draws attention to what they've done, not who they are as a person.
It's quite a tricky thing. It doesn't come naturally to me either.
It doesn't.
So you do have a toolkit of like sample phrases, because it's I think that's something that parents could pick up, and teachers, because it's even for me, I'm a psychologist. I'm all about growth mindset, and I'm also careful about what I tell my kid, but it's like, how do I phrase this without focusing on the child, but focusing on the effort and the progress that he's made? So and I think the important thing is as well to be good role models. I think when I play with something, for example, and I fail at something, I say, okay, it's okay, let's try again. And he always hears that, say, okay, let's try again. So it's something that kids could pick up at such a young age.
Definitely.
So if there are key things that you'd like to share, teachers or parents in our group, on how to build grit and resilience through mindset in children, what would be the key points that you'll share?
Yeah, so I think, like what you've said, Emma, when we're giving feedback, to really focus on what the child is doing, not on the child themselves, and to cut yourself some slack, because this is usually something different for most parents. They're used to, you're a superstar, you're this, that, and the other. So seeing it a growth mindset for you, this is something you're going to develop over time. Modeling responses to failure. So when things go wrong to you, do you get frustrated and upset? It's okay to show that, because we don't want to pretend we don't have feelings, but then showing what you would do next. And another thing which comes out of growth mindsets is to choose goals. So what tends to happen is fixed mindset kids choose something easy because they know that they can get 10 out of 10 and they can get it all right and they'll find everything in the word search. But growth mindset kids choose something where they might make some mistakes, but they're going to learn. So in some ways, encouraging them to try the tricky things and rewarding the progress rather than giving rewards to children. Oh, you got 10 out of 10. Rewarding, oh, you chose something difficult. And yes, you didn't get as many marks, but look at all this excellent learning you've done. So instead of what did you get in your test, talk about the learning journey that they're on.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Yvonne, for joining us. I'm sure our viewers will learn so much from this, not actually just in terms of developing grit and resilience through mindset in children, but I'm pretty sure that we've picked up, as adults ourselves.
Yeah.
So if people want to get in touch to learn more about your research, where can they find more information?
So there is a Stoke Reads Mindset Toolkit. I can put a link into the comments once we finish today. They're welcome to email me as well, or look on the Keel web pages.
So that's Yvonne Skipper Keel. If they Google you,
Yeah,
you'll be the
Yvonne
first.
Skipper at Keel. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you again,
Thank you very
Yvonne.
much for having me.
And I think that's all for now. So bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.